It's May, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and it's also AAPI Heritage Month. Coincidence? I think not, because if you're Asian American, if you know the Asian experience, then you're pretty familiar with the fact that the Asian experience and mental illness is very much so intertwined. And there's one common theme between all the Asian people that I know. It is that they're all high achievers and all perfectionists. And I think if you were to look at the low/mid achievers, which honestly I think we should all strive to be like mid achievers, there's such a fear of being average that sometimes that fear of not being the best manifests as just not even trying, because it's better to just not try, fail, be consistently bad than to try to strive for more and not be able to meet expectations. So, in this episode of The Soul Whisperer, I'm going to be talking to you all about perfectionism, its root causes, anxiety, and also the myth, the illusion of the high achiever. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Jen Sui. I'm a certified hypnotherapist, life coach, as well as a spiritual guide, and my whole thing is to help you just be yourself. Because when you are yourself, everything else in life becomes easier. Your relationships, your career, your health, everything becomes an expression of you, and you feel like you're just not trying in life, but everything's going your way. And if you're somebody who is highly anxious, chances are you have a really, really hard time of letting this happen. Chances are you grew up with a lot of anxiety, a lot of criticism, and a lot of what if. What if I'm not good enough? Or what if this happens? What if that happens? You have to prepare for the worst case scenario. You probably lived in a lot of scarcity and survival mindset. And one of the ways that that manifests is this need for control. And when you need control, when you need a certain outcome, right, you're attached to getting the six-figure job, getting married by a certain age, looking a certain way, going to a specific college, having a specific car, and all these external measurements of success, of enoughness is outside of you to get validation, then of course you're going to feel this constriction that you need to control your circumstances, you need to control yourself, you need to control others around you in order to feel safe. Now, this is going to show for you in so many different ways, but they're all going to be different flavors of fear. And let me tell you this, fear stands for false evidence appearing real. And when you're living in this way where you are gathering evidence for a false reality, meaning it's not safe to trust people, it's not good for you to get anything less than 100% on an exam, that if you weigh over 100 pounds, that you are ugly, that you're not going to be attractive, that if you disappoint your parents, that means that you are an utter failure. You start to see the world in a lens where you attribute every misfortune, everything bad in this world to a personality flaw that you can see in yourself or that you fear. For example, you look at somebody who's homeless and the assumption is, well, they were lazy because you were told that if you were lazy, if you didn't go all the time, if you weren't high achieving, if you weren't the best, that you were going to end up on the streets. And that's also what you were threatened with as well. Then you're going to think that every bad thing in your life happened because of you, which is just simply not true. We live in this world of duality where good things happen, bad things happen. And if you haven't heard of the proverb by now of good or bad, we don't know, with the story of the farmer who had a son and it was like he broke his leg and they were all like, oh, that's so sad. And he was like, well, good or bad, I don't know. We'll find out, right? And then him breaking his leg ended up saving him from going to be drafted to the war. And then they're like, oh, well, yeah, like, there you go, right? You don't know if the misfortunes, quote unquote, that you have are actually bad and are going against you, or if it's going to lead you to something else. You've heard so many stories of where people will go through breakups and then that creates like their hit song, right? Or people will get laid off from a job and then they'll start their own business and then they make seven figures, right? And they make this huge impact. Or maybe you got sick and you went in for a checkup for it, and it turns out that during that checkup they caught a tumor and they were able to remove it before it became cancerous, right? There's so many situations in this world where things that look bad on the outside actually lead you to something greater. But when you live in fear, you're living in such an illusion that like the world is scary, the world is bad, that you can't be yourself, that if you make one wrong step that you're going to die. And it keeps you in this fight or flight. And when you're in fight or flight, it's really hard to make good decisions because you are also dealing with this inability to trust yourself, trust others. And so now the question is, where does this fear truly come from? Why do you never feel good enough? No matter how much you've accomplished, no matter what you've done, no matter how much you know, why do you feel like there's always something more to be conquered? And sometimes this can be really hard to grasp because I know for me personally, when I first started really working on my healing and really intentionally changing my mindset, being able to shift my relationship with myself because I just did not want to be this depressed, anxious mess anymore. And I realized, oh, I actually have more power over myself than I thought. One of the first things that I had to realize was how much I was living in my mind, because it was much safer than living in my body and feeling my feelings. And I didn't recognize these signs of anxiety that I had. I didn't recognize these signs of fears that I had. I remember this came up really strongly with body image, because I would not say that I was ever somebody who didn't like myself. I was never like, oh my gosh, like I think I look ugly. There were times where definitely I would say things to that effect, but inherently I was like, oh no, that's not true. But what would happen is I would look in the mirror and then I would feel this like feeling of kind of like disgust, or this like, ugh, like rejection, or be like really disappointed, or like, ugh, like this like, I just don't like what I see, right? But if you were to ask me if I had body image issues, I would have been like, no, I'm just like trying to get to this like goal weight, right? Or I'm just trying to look this certain way because I think I would look better that way. And it's a really convoluted thing that we'll do, where I see this a lot in perfectionism, where it's like, well, it's not that you don't think that you are doing enough, it's that you think that you could be doing more. Or it's not like you are discontent with what you have right now. It's just that life would be better if you just had a little bit more money, had a nicer car, and got this degree. But really, it's just resistance. Now, here's the thing, you can't think your way to creating physical safety. If you could, then you could tell any person who is stressed or having a panic attack to calm down and that they're going to be okay and that they're safe, and then it would just stop. But that's just not the way that it works, because it's in your body, it's in the 3D. You need to be able to physically access that safety. Now, when you look at the different dimensions of reality, we have the 3D, which is our physical bodies. We have the 4D, which is our thinking minds. And then we have the 5D, which is intuition, that spiritual sense, that connection of love. You know, it's that consciousness that really connects us all. Now, I want you to consider this. You can't access the 5D from the 4D. You have to access it from the 3D. And what that means is, if you were to ever think about these times where you felt kind of a transcendental experience, whether that's, you know, you went to go see the Northern Lights or Niagara Falls, you know, or you went on a hike and you saw this view of the city, and it just like takes your breath away, right? You there's not even any words or any thoughts. You're just like experiencing, you're so in awe of it. You're in this like, whoa, this wonderment, right? You're experiencing it with your 3D body. Even just if you're having a rough day and you go out for a walk and you're in the sunlight and all of a sudden your body kind of chills out, right? That is an example of how accessing the 5D really starts with the 3D, with your 3D body being receptive to all this beauty that's around you, the information that's around you, that's nonverbal, that's not in a thought, that's not requiring your brain to work, but actually just for you to receive. And that's where you are being in receiving mode instead of trying to resist or control something. Because anytime you're trying to make something happen, right, you're really pushing effort into a job, into a relationship, into your health, into writing a book, or creating something, right? You're really putting an effort into something. You are pushing outside of you and you're not receiving. But when you are receiving the idea, receiving love, receiving money, receiving joy, and you are in that presence, that's when you're able to connect with the 5D reality. That's when you're able to connect to your intuition. That's when you're able to connect to spirituality and to God and to, or to source, or whatever the word that, you know, resonates with you most is. The 4D mind, the only job that it has is to help you bridge the 3D and the 5D, right? And it is a bridge in the way that you will get the download for an idea, for a place that you want to go, for a new business, maybe even a download of just wisdom to help you through something. You'll get clarity. And then it's up to your 4D mind to go and critically think and create a plan and to be able to take action to make that into the physical reality, right? It adds weight, it adds density to pull down this idea, this vision that you have into the material world. But it's a one-way street. It does not go the other way. You cannot think your way into clarity of what you want to do in your life. You cannot think your way into your purpose. You have to live it and you have to physically experience it. You have to physically experience what you're curious about, what you're excited about, what brings you joy, the causes that make you really upset, the things that really light you up or tear you down. You have to physically experience those things in order to have the knowing. Same thing when it comes to like dating, for example. If you have to think whether or not you like somebody and you're going through a mental checklist instead of like feeling into it, either you're too afraid to feel your actual feelings or you're lying to yourself. or you're just that disconnected from your feeling and your heart and your soul that the only thing that you can rely on, the only way that you've been living is with your mind, right? Which is kind of a living in autopilot, living in a fear-based mindset. And when you think about anxiety, anxiety is truly just thinking and thinking and thinking. And perfectionism is this feeling of always needing to refine, always needing for it to be better. Because right now, it's not safe to stay stagnant, right? If you are trying to get ahead and you are perfect, well, guess what? Perfection only exists in one point in time. And so if you were to fall back in some way, if you were to lose parts of yourself, if things were to change, if the standard were to change, if the vision were to change, right? If the criteria of what makes you enough changes, then that means you have to as well. So you're in this perpetual state of feeling not enough, of feeling not safe, which of course is going to breed anxiety because you're always thinking about what you need to do next, why you're not enough, and anticipating the next threat. So when you're living in the 4D mind, you're like constantly living in the bridge, right? You're constantly living in the middle ground, but you're not in the 5D where you're receiving, and you're also not in the 3D where you're just experiencing. You're constantly in this tense state of the 4D mind, which is not where you're meant to live. Speaking of thinking, if you're going to be living in your head, might as well make it a really nice place to live. And that is my segue into thanking the sponsor for this episode, me, Jen Sway, The Soul Whisperer. The Soul Whisperer is an online platform in which you can learn more about yourself, your energy, and how to align with your soul's purpose. We have masterclasses, self-paced courses, as well as a growing library of hypnosis audios that you can download to help better your life and align you to your manifestations right now. Some of my most popular masterclasses are Healing the Feminine, as well as The Art of Feeling Your Feelings. And these masterclasses already go super deep into one specific topic, but if you're really looking to overhaul your whole life, hit that reset button, then you're going to want to check out my courses like Find Yourself as well as True Self-Alignment. These are like having a life coach, a spiritual guide in your back pocket. I literally teach you in depth all of the tools, concepts, and perspectives that I share with my own private one-on-one coaching clients for a fraction of the price. I'll put the link to this entire library so you can browse it for yourself down in the description box below, or you can go to my site at jensway.com/resources, and you'll find all of the information there. With that, let's get back into the episode. The thinking mind is supposed to be a tool. It's a beautiful thing to be able to think ahead and to anticipate and to plan, but it's not a natural state for you to live in. It's just simply it's not sustainable. So one of the things you have to be able to do here is to really trust your intuition. Now, how do you connect with your intuition if you're so used to living in fear? And like I said, you're living in this bridge. So there's really two sides of the spectrum you can go to. You can go to the 3D body and really practice being in your physical body. And this is why you see so many people who are coaches, healers, practitioners, yoga instructors, people who are really like into something physical and wants to help others people with it, is because they probably went through something where they started to manifest physical symptoms, right? Whether that is, a rash that won't go away, or chronic pain, some type of chronic illness, even like mental illness, for example, that leads to lethargy or becoming overweight, eating disorders, all these things. This disconnect manifests physically because it is your intuition, your soul's way to bring your attention back to the body. Chances are you won't be able to really have the energy to stress about your business, stress about your career, stress about some relationship, and be overthinking it if your body is literally shutting down. And oftentimes these practices of being back in your body, whether it's through nutrition or through movement, nowadays breath work is becoming a huge thing, sound baths are becoming a huge thing, is because it allows you to drop back into your body and just receive. There's a saying in hypnotherapy where when you don't cry, the body will cry for you. So if you're not able to physically release tears, if you're not able to physically feel the pain that you're experiencing emotionally, trust me, it's going to manifest in your physical body. I've worked with multiple clients on physical ailments. One in particular that was one of my first clients ever, and it to this day is one of my favorite stories to share because she was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease years ago, and her body produced too much collagen, which, on the surface sounds like, oh, having more collagen seems like a good thing. Well, not when it is creating collagen and creating thickening layers around your organs and, these things that are going to suppress your immune function. So she was diagnosed with this autoimmune condition years ago, and ever since then she's always lived with inflammation in her body. That's what a chronic illness will do. However, when we focus on healing the chronic illness and getting to the root cause of it, what we saw was a tremendous amount of childhood trauma in which she felt the need to protect herself because there was nobody to protect her. And when your subconscious gets the directive to protect yourself, it will create so many maladaptive behaviors, maladaptive habits, and illnesses in order to try to do so. Whether it tries to protect you by having you fear the unknown, fear judgment, give you perfectionism, because if you are afraid of what people think, then you will be safe because it will drive you to try to do better. It will drive you to be number one. It will drive you to hopefully be irreplaceable at your job, at your relationship, in your friend group, so that you don't have to fear being alone, right? So you don't have to experience the pain of not being seen. But it backfires because you're not being yourself. It backfires because you're not actually able to ever be present and enjoy life. And you're constantly probably people pleasing and trying to manipulate other people's perceptions of you because you don't even know your perception of yourself. You never had the time to even experience who you are and what you like and what your true nature is. So you're living and basing your entire life off of an illusion, a lie, a story that you want to tell because your brain thought that that would keep you safe. Now, to go back to this particular client example, she had all of these experiences in which she needed to protect herself. And so her body created this physical illness of literally protecting herself by producing more collagen to protect herself, to protect more her with putting on more layers. And when we were able to release this, when we were able to transform it, when she was able to see why it was truly there and how she didn't need that anymore, her results were incredible, like genuinely incredible. Because in the next month, when she went back to her healthcare provider and she did her blood work, which she was doing routinely every 4 to 8 weeks for literally years, ever since she was diagnosed with this chronic illness, for the first time ever, her blood test results came back completely normal. She showed zero signs of inflammation in her blood. Like, how incredible is that? How miraculous is that? Because your body is designed to heal. Your body is designed to allow you to live. It is designed to protect you from the bad and also help you experience the good. That's literally what your immune function is there for, right? It's there to help you defend you against the bad things. That's why you have a conscious mind to filter out what is true, what is not, so that not everything is porous and going into your subconscious. It's only the things that you allow it. However, when we are brought up, oftentimes we are not taught how to protect our energy. We're not taught how to protect our minds. We are sponges and we're constantly absorbing. And because of this, we pick up on things that are not ours. We pick up on entities that have negative intentions, malintentions, and we pick up and attract people who are energetic vampires who are always feeding off of us, and we don't ever learn how to actually be in our own light, protect ourselves, and be who it is that we truly are. When you don't know how to shield your energy, when you don't have those things in place, when you don't have the discernment to tell what is true, what is false, what is fear, and what is, real, of course, you're going to be in a perpetual state of anxiety. Because when you are misaligned in who it is that you are going to create distortion within your identity. Identity distortion becomes goal fixation. Meaning, when you do not know who you are, when you are shielded from that, when you are barred from that, and you are living out this other version of you that is not who you truly are, you are always having to look outside of you in order to find a sense of identity, to find a sense of grounding. You're going to have to look towards your partner and say, I'm a wife, and that is who I am. And therefore, you are playing out that role. You're going to look towards your parents and say that you are the child of these parents who came from this place, who had these dreams for you, and therefore that is part of your identity. You're going to constantly look at where you came from, the struggles that you had, and identify with that as that is who it is that you are, because that is where you came from. And while I'm one for remembering your roots and to honoring them, I'm not one for living out your past. Because when you look towards your past and you root your identity in it, that is all you're ever going to be able to create in the future. No matter how different your life looks, you're going to emotionally, mentally, spiritually be stuck in the past until you tell yourself a better story. Now, how do you go ahead and do this? How do you get over this chronic anxiety and this perfectionism? This is where we use my virtues, values, and visions concept. This is the first thing I do with every new client is I go through their virtues, values, and visions. And every single time I talk about this, I'm going to link my original video that talks about my core life philosophy, how I discovered who I am through the virtues, values, and visions framework. It's also a book that I'm working on right now. And if you're subscribed to my Substack, The Soul Whisperer, you're going to be able to read my field notes that's really stress testing this philosophy, this framework of virtues, values, and visions for you to create a more meaningful and fulfilling life. Now, to overcome the anxiety, to overcome the perfectionism, you're going to have to overcome this fear and this need for control. You're going to have to let go. and specifically let go of the vision that you created for yourself. Because remember, one of the biggest issues of why we get disconnected from who it is that we are, why we feel like we're not on the right path, is because we are not being who it is that we are. We have attached ourselves to a specific vision and outcome that we want for ourselves, what we want life to look like, an identity of wanting the 7-figure income because that means that we're going to be successful, wanting the ring because that means that we're going to be loved, wanting even the nomadic lifestyle because that's what freedom looks like, right? Wanting to have no responsibilities in the world and go live on a homestead and just raise farm animals because that feels idyllic to us, right? I mean, it goes multiple ways. It doesn't even have to go the traditional route of what your parents thought was successful or what society deems as successful. Nowadays, society has deemed a lot of other things as successful or as peaceful, when in reality, if you were to actually look at it, I don't know if most people have the chutzpah inside of them that wants to have the lifestyle of shoveling poop on a homestead with 6 cows and 14 chickens. I think a lot of people like just would not really enjoy that because they enjoy the creature comforts of this physical reality, and that's okay, right? And contrastly, I think there's a lot of people who wouldn't be able to maintain the lifestyle of a tech entrepreneur or somebody who makes multiple 6 figures, 7 figures in their business because of all of the responsibility that it requires. And that's probably not what they want to do in their lives, right? So again, we have to be careful of what is the vision that we have created within our minds that we think this is going to create peace. This is going to be our purpose. This is going to be the thing that makes us happy. This is going to be what health looks like, and really decondition all that shit. So, when you've detached from the vision, then you have to go into what are your values and what are your virtues. So, again, this is the first thing I do with every single client who walks through my door. So, if you're interested in doing this work with me, I'll put all the links down below in the description box. You can go to my website at jencuy.com. That's jencuy.com. And that's going to be the first thing that we do, whether you're booking a soul whispering session and you want more clarity on where you're going to go through tarot, or you're booking a hypnotherapy session and you're wanting to do this deeper healing work to release past traumas, to release these fears, release these doubts. We still need to figure out what your true essence is and what your genuine vision for your life is. So once you've been able to detach from the vision, now you have the space to actually look at what is meaningful in your life and who it is that you actually are. This is where things might take time for you if you're trying to do it on your own, figuring out what feels misaligned to you. This can be as small as not liking hiking. Now, all my friends know the story, which I think is so funny. But when I first moved to LA, I was pretty fit. I was really into the gym, right? And obviously, I became a personal trainer later on in life, but I was really into nutrition. I was really into how the body worked. And everyone just assumed that I liked hiking, even though I have literally never hiked in my life at that point. And I was used to be so resistant because I was a golfer, and the thing is, in golf tournaments you have to walk, right? You're not allowed to use those little carts and drive around. You have to physically walk. In most cases people will carry their bags, but I was like, I do not want to carry a bag, so I always use a push cart. But you still have to walk 18 holes. You're walking miles and miles and miles for like 4.5 hours. Anywho, everyone just assumed that I liked hiking. And I kind of just took on that identity. Like, yeah, why wouldn't I like hiking? I'm also a vegan, so obviously I love nature and want to protect the environment, and therefore should probably also be in nature. So I would go on these hikes with people, and I just did not enjoy it. My knees hurt. I just didn't think that the views were that great. Like, it wasn't really anything too special. I just did not like the process of it. It hurt my knees. And I just felt like so gross afterwards. I did not feel refreshed. But I kept doing it. I kept doing it for years. And it took me until like years later. And the thing is, like, I had known I didn't like hiking deep down, but it took me years to admit it to myself. So that's the thing, is like, there's probably a lot of things in your life that you're doing that you're not a fan of, and things that you would rather be doing, but you just don't want to admit it to yourself. There's so many times where I've done readings for people. And mind you, I've read for over 1,000 people now doing tarot. And when I ask them what it is that they want, oftentimes they come at me with, I don't know. But genuinely, most of the time, because I'll ask them more questions, it's not that they don't actually know, they're afraid to admit it to themselves, right? Kind of like when you were a kid and you said that you wanted to be a marine biologist, but now as an adult, like, you feel like you can't say that because it's so far off from what you're doing, but that's what your soul has always wanted to do. And you might even think like, okay, well, I want to be an actor, but that's so cliche because everyone wants to be an actor. Guess what? No, they don't. No, they don't. I know so many people who would just never want to do acting because they hate being on screen. They hate being in the center of attention. So no, it's not cliche. You just might have a desire that is similar to other people, but you have to do it in your own way. So anyways, back to my hiking story. I literally went on a 2-day backpacking trip in Zion where I was river hiking in sneakers for over 10 miles. And we did like, I don't know, I think it was a 22-mile hike in the barracks. in Zion. And it was beautiful, don't get me wrong. But I literally cried on the second day because I was just so tired. And it was just my first backpacking, first camping trip, first like big hiking trip ever. And I did it because my boyfriend at the time was an avid hiker and I went with all of his hiking friends. And again, zero experience. I didn't even have any equipment. I just borrowed everyone else's equipment. But I just did this thing because, well, one, I wanted to, spend time with my person. But I also was kind of like, yeah, I can hike. It's fine. It literally took me a few years after that when I finally took a trip to Yosemite with my partner. And I finally let myself admit, like on the way there, I was like, this place is gorgeous. I love it. But I'm definitely more of a frolic in the meadow type than a big hike type. And luckily on that trip, it was also super hot. So we just biked for most of it. And we did a few hikes. And if you've ever been to Yosemite or consider going to Yosemite, then you're probably familiar with this one hike that there's like a waterfall, but then there's like two or three tiers of waterfalls. And you can go up to the first waterfall and just come back, or you can just keep going up. And it's like this really intense hike where you're going up so many like flights of stairs essentially, and you're ascending really really high. And I was just like, yeah, we're not doing that. And luckily, because of the heat and because my partner was very lovely, we were just like, okay, we're just gonna go on this one little hike, get to the first waterfall, have a little picnic, and then come back down. But all this to say, you have no idea how many things that you are doing in your life that you are consciously putting effort into. And especially something like this, that you are literally physically exerting yourself constantly over and over again, time after time, month after month, years after year, that you've been constantly doing this thing that is not you, that you do not like, that you do not even enjoy, and yet you still tolerate and you still think is fine because this is just who you should be, or this is like what you've always done. And the amount of liberation that you will experience when you finally let these things go and you let yourself admit to yourself that maybe you're not a fucking high achiever, and that's okay. Maybe you just want to tang ping, which is a Chinese term that I learned from a friend recently, which literally translates to lay flat. And what that means is you don't care about the hustle. You don't want to have like millions of followers and make millions of dollars and just like, be doing all these crazy adventures all the time. Maybe you just want to experience and be at peace with your day-to-day life, and that's okay. And I think honestly, because the biggest fear for perfectionists and high achievers is to be average, is to be normal. And honestly, this has been a theme in my clients' life for years now, is that I will work with people who they don't feel enough, not because they're not actually enough, because they just have a fear of being average, of being, of not learning something right away and being amazing at it. Or they feel like such high expectations for themselves that they're not able to even enjoy the process. So yeah, maybe there's nothing wrong with you. Maybe you just have to accept the fact that you want to tongue ping and life is going to get so much better. Now, the last thing I wanted to note in this episode is another spiritual root cause of why this is happening. Now, we talked about the nervous system and we talked about feeling your feelings. We talk about like all the different dimensions of reality. I mean, not even all of them. We talked about a few of the dimensions of reality. But one thing that I really need to point out is the idea of hungry ghosts and negative entities, because this is such a real thing. In fact, just this morning, I had a 3.5 hour hypnotherapy session, not with a client, but for myself, for me, where one of the first things that came up was a negative energy entity that had attached itself to me at birth and has created so much resistance in my life. And thankfully, we were able to remove it. But let me tell you this, if you are familiar with Buddhism at all, then you might be familiar with the karmic wheel. Now, if you're not familiar with the karmic wheel, there's basically 6 sections in this wheel. And there's a top half that has 3 and a bottom half that has 3. And it's kind of cut into like a pie. And at the bottom, we have ghouls and hungry ghosts and demonic creatures. And then we also have humans and we have animals. And then on the top half, we have the gods and the deities. And then we have like the demigods and the whatever else. I don't remember the last one. But essentially, what happens is that these demonic creatures, these hungry ghosts and ghouls, and when you look back at history, when you look at other cultures that are not the Western culture, when you actually look at cultures who have vast history behind them and stories and legends and all this stuff, you always hear about these ghouls and these ghosts that make you afraid, right, that make you feel like you always need more. There's always these stories of greed, of needing more, of never being satisfied, and of possessing people and making them afraid, making them do crazy things, right? Making them hurt people, making them hurt themselves. And when you translate this to mental illness and why mental illness is truly spiritual illness, you really see anxiety and this fear that seems unshakable, that feels like it has tentacles, that is just like crushing you and making you, like puppeteering you into always wanting more, always needing to do better, never feeling enough, always making you, pulling you out of the present, not allowing you to connect, not allowing you to enjoy life, not allowing you to see the beauty of this physical world. When you see it from this lens, it makes sense because these entities will attach to you. They will prey on your vulnerabilities. They will prey on people who have trauma, who have experienced, childhood abuse, and they will prey on that part of you that has already fear built into you and exacerbate it tenfold and will stay around, and not only stay around, but also grow stronger because, again, fear is false evidence appearing real. And when you have a body of false evidence, you will continue adding to it. Now, on the other hand, when you are starting to build a body of evidence for what it is that you want to believe is true, when you actually have the courage to believe in a different world, to believe that you can be happy, to believe that you can have what you want, to believe that you are enough, right? And you actually start to build evidence for that, for those things, then your entire reality shifts. That veil, that illusion gets lifted. So if you feel like you have these entities that are attached to you, these hungry ghosts that are possessing you, the best thing that you can do is to stop feeding it with fear and with evidence for how things are going to go wrong and be bad, and how you're bad, and how you can't trust the world, and the world is so scary and doom and gloom, and consuming all the media that's out there that's just like fear mongering, and really start to swing the pendulum onto the other side, to really see the good, to see what is possible. Like, so much of social media really pisses me off because it's all these people who are fear mongering and also like, complaining about the systems, but there's no solution. And the thing is, there's so much value in creating awareness around a problem, but then the other thing is, okay, now what? What are you going to do about it? Because oftentimes it just stirs up these emotions within you, but then you don't have anywhere to put it. It has nowhere to actually be transmuted. You're not creating with it. And oftentimes the best thing that you can do is to heal yourself. Because when you have worked on yourself, when you have healed yourself, when you decondition these layers of what you're supposed to be doing, what life is supposed to look like, the people that you're supposed to be hanging around with, and et cetera, right? You're so focused on yourself. You're so focused on what you look like, what life looks like for you, what you have, what you don't have, and trying to create more, then you're actually in creation mode. Then you're actually in the 5D, where you're allowing space for the divine to work through you, through source to work through you, for your soul to speak to you, and for you to actually listen to your soul whispers and start building the courage to move into alignment with your life. When you meet fear with courage, right, with genuine truth, it's so neutral, like as if the sky was blue, right? When you think that you are safe, right, and that feels as true as you as the sky is blue, then you're kind of unstoppable. You're really unfuckwithable. When you're not afraid of dying, the world is at your fingertips. Like, you can literally do whatever, say whatever, be whoever, because you're not afraid of the one thing that we are wired to be afraid of, which is death. You will not be afraid of being humiliated to death. You will not be afraid of physically getting yourself into a situation in which you die. Like, you will not be afraid of losing everything, of not having money, of being on the streets. Because, again, like, if you are not afraid of death, you have everything at your fingertips. And then you add to that with the courage and the audacity to be yourself, literally the world opens up to you. In fact, that's actually a huge reason why I created this whole program called Find Yourself, which I will link down below and also pop up on the screen here if you're watching the YouTube version or you're watching the video on Spotify. But this entire course was designed to help you understand yourself, understand and navigate through past trauma. And this is a really, really good place to start. I would say, even if you're not wanting to do necessarily one-on-one work, and you're wanting to like really gather more knowledge and more understanding of yourself, this is a really great place to start, because we dive into mindset work, we dive into trauma, we dive into the beliefs that trauma creates, and then we dive into how to actually move past those things. And part of the moving past those things is to be able to have the courage and the audacity to be yourself, to live the life that you truly want to live. Because here's a harsh truth that I'm going to impose on you. You might believe that you are a very hard worker, that you're somebody who is willing to always put in the work and to do the uncomfortable thing. But what if the uncomfortable thing is actually not to do more and to go harder in what you're doing? What if working hard does not look like putting in more hours into, making something work, but it actually means to do less? What if the hard thing for you to do, the scary thing to do, is actually to chill the fuck out? What if the scary thing to do is to not actually maintain the peace and maintain the balance, but to actually create chaos, because chaos is necessary for things to change? What if what you actually need to work harder on is not outside of you, but within you, to meet deeper layers of yourself and to meet the fears that you have head on, and to see the true desires that you have and let them actually be seen? Let you yourself admit to having those desires. That is how you become unfuckwithable. So if that's you, highly recommend enrolling in my course, Find Yourself. It's literally going to help you find yourself and then go beyond that point and actually start creating a life that is truly based off of who it is that you are. And you find yourself not wanting to do that journey alone and you'd rather do it with me. You have experiences that are holding you back from your past childhood traumas, or you have these sticky behaviors and fears and you're just like, I don't know where this comes from, then that is where hypnotherapy is going to help you tremendously. You can find all of these resources, all of my services on my site at jencui.com. That's jencui.com. I'll link it right here on the screen and also down below in the description box. Friends, that is everything today. I've been really enjoying coming to the park and filming this content for you, especially, again, it being Mental Health Awareness Month. It just makes a lot of sense that I feel the spark come back for it. But thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. If you can, I'd really appreciate it if you were to give this podcast, The Soul Whisper, a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Leave a review if you're listening to it on that, or if you're watching this on YouTube, give it a thumbs up and share it. This doesn't just help you, it helps everybody who needs this information, who is looking for it, to find it. And if you can play a part in that, I would really, really appreciate it. All the good karma is going to come your way. With that, friends, until next time, stay well and listen to your soul whispers.